Hello guys, and welcome back to the Alchemistry TCG YouTube channel. Welcome back. Happy to have you here, and just a quick apology that this how to play alchemistry video has taken so long. Me and the co-developer Danny have had some busy months, and that has resulted in a delay in the making of this video. So welcome back and enjoy. We'll dive right in with how to win Alchemistry TCG. First and primary method of winning the game. Reduce your opponent's life force to 0. Just like all other card games that use a life-based system, your creatures will deal damage to your opponent through attacks and effects, potentially, which will eventually result in it dwindling from 30 to 0. If you beat your opponent to do that, then you win. Simple. Second method is via deck out, which is where if your opponent has it comes to their turn and they have nothing in their deck zone, or their what we'll come to later is the laboratory zone, then they cannot draw and therefore lose. I will quickly show you this now. Oh no, this is my last turn, because I only have this one card left to draw. Unless I can reshuffle, that's it. That's deck gone. Next turn comes around, you go to draw, you can't, you lose. And your opponent wins. Or vice versa, if you deck them out. Hope that makes sense. We'll come to this field shortly. The final way to win is by card effect. The most cheesy and yet card game trope way to win. I have all 5 pieces of Exodia, for example. Obviously that's not in this game, but that's an example of a card effect in another game that results in you winning the game. No such effects exist in this game yet, but it is a way to win, so it's worth noting. This is an alchemistry field filled pretty much. The field will pretty much never look like this, but this is just to demonstrate well the positionings are for various cards. So we'll start over here with the array. This is the transmutation circle that allows you to transmute your resources into creatures and weapons. You start with your basic array played on the field. This must be present. You can upgrade this array through all of the tiers, novice, intermediate, and above. There are no such cards above intermediate yet. By paying 1 turn for each tier you upgrade. More on that later. Next, you have 2 resource zones. So if you have a creature that costs, say, 3 sulfur. You got sulfur here? Oh no, that's not the sulfur. That's the sulfur. Say it costs 3. This card is worth 5. You have 2 left over. You put the card in the resource zone and you mark it with a dice or whatever countermeasure you wish to use. Say this has 2 left to use. Same with this iron. It's the exact same situation, but you only have 2 slots to do this with. This array gives you a 3rd slot, but for most people, 2 slots. You have these 2 slots. that is it. If you then create something that say costs, I don't know, so you have these two, and then you're playing like a really multi-mixed deck, and you play something that uses gold, but it only uses free gold, those 2 excess gold will be burnt. And that's how that works. Okay, next, these are the 2 creation zones. So when you use said resources to make creatures, this is where they go. So these zones here, 2 creation zones. These essentially act as a summoning sickness before they move into the battle zones or battle areas. There is an exception to this. More on that in the card layout. And then, as far as the active kind of field area, you have your 4 battle zones. From here, you can use your resources to create armor and weapons to equip to your creatures and do battle with. Final part of the field is this space here. This is a token area. Cards that create tokens can have an infinite amount of tokens in this area in a sort of like a stacked pool. However much space you have, stack them, spread them out, whatever, you know, if you only got 1 creature here, then, you know, you got more room to spread out. But when you fill these 4 zones, then as long as when you're attacking you identify each individual card, then it's all good. So these 4 here, and from here, this is just a quick note to the card layout. So underneath the image there is something known as inspiration. This card does not have any, so it must go through the means of the creation zone to get here. But if a card is inspired by another card, you can create it directly onto that card, and the underneath card is disposed of along with all weapons and armors attached. So be careful when planning out your turns and what you attach to who. Finally, the sort of less active part of the field is the deck and the ground. So the deck is referred to as your laboratory because it contains your resources and weapons, armors, and creations. The reason it's called the laboratory and not anything else is because when you draw the cards into your hand, it's either you having access to that resource or you've had the idea to make that weapon, armor, or creature. So when these cards are in your hand, they're essentially either resources or thoughts. And that's a simple way of thinking of it. And finally, the ground. This is where all natural things go when they are disposed of. So to the ground they go. And that is the field layout. There's been little elements of other parts of the rules in this section, but we will cover those more in depth shortly. I hope this all makes sense so far. And next is the phases of a turn. So we've got our field here, nothing's on it. So at the start of the game, you draw a 6-card hand. 4, 5, 6. I'm just explaining this quickly as it is linked to the draw phase of your turn. So the first thing you do in any given turn, unless a card states otherwise, is draw a card. Okay, so, and then that goes to your hand. That's your draw phase. Next is the standby phase. This is where any effects that state that they happen in the standby phase happen. And any creations in the creation zone down here. I don't know if that's an armor, weapon, or creation, but just it's a creation for now. Move into the battle zones, and that is all that happens in that phase. Next is the creation phase, which is where you can use resources from your hand and weapons and armors that are on the field, or decomposing items on the field. I'll explain that in a second. To create things, and that goes, if they're creations, they go here, and if they're armors and weapons, they attach to whatever you want to attach them to. This is then followed by the combat phase, where you declare your attacks individually for each creature. So you say, I want to use this creature to attack your creature over there, and damage is dealt as the attacking creature's attack points minus from the defending creature's defense points, and damage is kept permanently once it's damaged, unless you have a card to remove damage. So if this card, I don't know what it is without looking closer, but if this card has 3 attack and the opponent has 4 defense, you would put a dice with 3 on there to signify it's taken 3 damage and it's got 1 left. Say for example, keep this as 3 and the opponent's defense is 1. You have an excess of 2 and the opponent takes 2 damage to their life points directly, regardless if there's any other creatures, and you must go through creatures before you can attack the player direct. So if the player has no creatures or creations and you have 1 or more, you can attack with those directly to the alchemist on their side. Next is the end phase plus decomposition. So at the end of your turn, any creatures that have died through any effects or whatever, typically this will happen during your opponent's turn, or as a result of combat, but something called decomposition happens. So obviously these are all living things made from minerals and other elements, so they don't just disappear and into the ground. They have a phase of decomposition, so you turn them sideways, they are still occupying that slot on the field. You can't put something over the top without using this for something else first, or waiting the 1 turn it takes for it to decompose. So once it's turned sideways, creations and weapons and armors can all be used to make new things, but if you say use something that has a value of 5 to make something that has a value of 3, the excess 2 doesn't matter. You can only use, it goes to the ground regardless of any excess, to sort of balance out recycling of creatures. And if you create, say you have a creation that's been killed and you have an identical one in your hand, the new one goes here and the old one goes to the ground, unless you have an array that allows you to jump straight into combat zones. The other thing is, if you are upgrading your array, it costs turns. So if you have the tier up array from this one, this is the basic array, you must start with a basic array, as I explained earlier. If you then choose to upgrade that to novice, intermediate, for each tier you pay 1 turn. So in your creation phase, you'll say, I'm making a new array. You will put the new one over the top of the old one. They both stay there, but you only get the effect of the very topmost array. And your turn will immediately end. And from that point forward, for the amount of turns you pay, so if it's just 1 turn, the next turn you will draw your card and your turn will immediately end. So you still get your draw phase, but past that, you get, oh, and if you have any creations here, so obviously it's during the creation phase this happens, so you could create 2 creatures and then upgrade your array. So what will happen is, because so next turn you'll draw your card, and anything here will move up because it has to, unless it can't, and then the turn will be passed back to your opponent. I think this all makes sense so far. And just one more thing, array tiers. So there are 6 tiers of array that we have planned for the game. So far, intermediate is the highest that we've made, but I think this is getting a tier bump from playtesting. So it goes from basic, which is the one you have to start the game, to novice, which is tier 1, intermediate tier 2, advanced tier 3, expert tier 4, and forbidden tier 5. Okay, I was wrong, 5, I miscounted. Oops. But yeah, the forbidden will have an alternative cost than paying turns, as is the case with other arrays, but that's because they will be so powerful that they will require an alternative payment. This is unknown at this point, but I'll make an update video when the first forbidden array is created, explaining how we decided that it's going to work. And that is the tiers. Just another thing is, at the moment these just say in the box underneath the type of array. I'm also going to add a hyphen and T0, or for this it would be T0, for this it would be T2, just as a reminder text of how many turns you're required to pay, because it's simple to implement. So yep. And also, as referenced in the field layout, the card layout. So there are several different types of card that I have laid out in front of me. So down here, the simplest to understand is a resource block. A resource block is always worth 5 of the resource element that it is. So this is a sulfur block, it's worth 5 sulfur in all instances, unless you use some of it and it's in your resource zone, but you know about that. Next is weapons and armor. These have the card layout of name at the top, element top right, and then in top to bottom order, weapons and armor have attack boost, the amount of equipment, the amount of weapons they can have equipped, which obviously if they're weapons or armor, typically this will be 0. So first is attack, next is weapon equipment, next is defense stat, and below that is amount of armors equipable. The only reason I mention about the weapons and armors in most instances not applying is there is one armor that sort of uses a creation as its stats, which requires you to equip it. So that is the one exception to the rule at present. That order is very important, and all numbers stated here as equipment, unless they have a minus in front of them, are treated as a plus. This is for 2 reasons. First of all, the software we use along with Excel just automatically removes plus signs if there's no equation that they're involved in. And secondly, there isn't enough room in the orbs along the side to have a plus sign, so that's why there's no plus sign. But any number that doesn't have a minus is always treated as a buff. Underneath is where it says whether it's a weapon or armor, so you know which stat you're looking at when you're equipping it. This is the effect box, where any effects and flavor text will be. Next, underneath, there's a black bar. At present, That doesn't have anything, but it will contain illustrator and set number. And then at the very bottom is the cost, written as a number followed by the element symbol that it requires. So in this case, I believe this is additional exoskeleton, so it's 7 sulfur or 7 iron, which is why there's a slash. But any time if you see a slash, it means or. If you see a plus, it means and. That's that one. Next, we'll go on to the creation, because this is the this is very similar to the armor and weapons. So you got name at the top, element, image, and then from top to bottom, you got attack, amount of equipable weapons, defense, and amount of equipable armors at the very bottom of the 4 orbs. Underneath the image, you have something called inspiration. If this box is blank, you can ignore it. If it has a name in there, that's the creation that inspired this. It's referring to the mechanic that allows you to jump into the battle zones, but at the cost of losing equipment that's equipped to the creature named there. Again, effects box. Follow any text as it states. Next, the black bar containing metadata. And finally, cost at the bottom again. And lastly, arrays, which we just covered. You know all about arrays, but just to cover their layout. Name, they don't have an element stated, they don't have stats. They do have the tier in this box. What they do, they will all have effects. That box will always have text, flavor text, and again the black bar will contain metadata. Lastly, I don't know where my tokens are, so I can't really show you them, but the tokens are full art cards that will contain any information referring to their specific token type. However, at the moment, these are only relevant for the wolf deck, and yeah, I don't have them handy. So just a couple clarifications on a few questions you might have about the rules and things I think I might have missed, potentially. So, firstly, there is no hand limit. Some card games have a hand limit. No such hand limit exists here. As with all card games, if the card states something that defies the rules, you listen to the card, not the rules. For example, if something says you draw 2 cards in your draw phase, you draw 2 cards, even if the rules state you draw 1. Anything else? I think that might be it. That might be the only things I can think of that I missed. Okay, well, I hope that you enjoyed this how to play video, and any feedback on the rules, how the game works, is welcome. We really need to hear back on how people think the game functions. If you want to watch a match and how this sort of goes down, refer to the Battle of the Creators video posted probably around a week ago at this point, maybe a little longer, depends on how long it takes me to edit this together, because this is going to be the longest video on the channel so far. And yeah, keep looking, like, subscribe, press the button, because it's important for YouTube algorithm, and also it means that you can keep up to date with new content. Hopefully now it's summer, I have new college, and that's why I stopped posting before. And yeah, so with that out of the way, like the video as well, leave us some feedback down below, even if it's just, you know, sounds good, or this, that, and the other, like whatever it is. Just also for any, like, I'm not sure how detailed the cards are on the video, but these are not the final print. The reason we decided to print through the Game Crafter just to play test is because neither of us have a printer that can deal with card. And also me and the other creator are both visually impaired, so cutting problems and all that, so that's why we decided to print through the Game Crafter, and that's why these are not final editions and there's no artist name on the card yet, but or set number, but it's in progress. These are just test cards, they're not the final edition. But yeah, thank you for watching, and if you've stuck around this far, congratulations. Thank you all.